Alright, this is Storm in Silence by Robert Thier. This is chapter 24, Twice Surprised. So just a bit of a disclaimer, my roommates are, you can hear them in the background, so even though the door is closed and I'm in my room, you can still kind of hear what's going on. So if you guys hear some chatter, that's them. Sorry for the not perfect, silence in the background, but that's okay. Alright, Twice Surprised. By the time we arrived at Lady Metcalf's, I was a nervous wreck. And I didn't mean some figure of speech kind of wreck. I meant an old Spanish galleon with broken masts, a rotting hull, and missing cannons. And possibly with the rotting skeleton of the captain in the master cabin. Blast, blast, blast! What am I going to do? Lord help me, what am I going to do? The coach crunched to a halt on the gravel outside Lady Metcalf's residence, and Wilkins leaned over to my little sister with a look in his eyes, as though he'd just been hit over the head with a heavy cudgel. Or maybe he was in love. "You look so beautiful tonight, Miss Ella." Thank you, Sir Philip. You're too kind." "No, I tell you nothing but the truth, and to further enhance your beauty, I wondered if you would do me the honor of wearing this in your hair tonight." He pulled a single white rose from behind his back. Ella paled. I could see what was going on in her head as clearly as though she had told me herself. She had accepted his attentions, even his gifts, because it was the courtesy demanded, but openly wearing a sign of his affection and thus accepting it, I could tell something in her was screaming that it would be a betrayal to Edmund, her love. Silly, of course. It wasn't a betrayal. It was only a ruddy flower, but there it was. I feel honored," she began haltingly. But then Sir Philip interrupted her. "I reconsidered. I thought that maybe this flower would fit the color of your hair better," and letting go of the white rose, he pulled out a sunflower as big as my palm. Ella's eyes widened. "And then, Miss Ella, I again thought nobody would see it. We need contrast to show off your beauty in the best light. It is what you deserve. So I brought this." And he pulled out a red rose. With an uncertain smile, he looked at Ella. "I simply cannot choose. They are all so beautiful. Could you perhaps pick one for me? Or maybe just wear them all? That would be the simplest solution. We could put the sunflower here and the roses." I had heard enough. "My sister is a lady and not a flower arrangement," I cut him off briskly. "You forget, sir, that she has to dance, and those beautiful flowers might fall out of her hair and get trampled underfoot. We wouldn't want that now, would we?" Oh, I suppose you're right." The knight looked crestfallen, like a little puppy that had been denied his stick to play with, and for a moment I almost felt something like pity. Then he perked up. "But she could always wear them after the dance, or maybe—" I pulled Ella out of the carriage before he could finish the sentence. The others were already out there, enjoying the attentions of the servants, who were bowing, taking coats, and opening doors, something which in our house happened very seldom. Quickly, take my coat." "You there, open the door." I sighed, trying to shut out my twin sisters' voices. At home, if you wanted to wait until Leadfield had opened the door for you, you'd probably die of old age, and if you wanted him to take your coat, he'd collapse under the weight. So this was a very welcome change, especially for Anne and Maria. The swarm of buzzing servants escorted us to the ballroom, where Lady Metcalf was already awaiting us. I looked around anxiously, but the lean, dark figure I feared to see was nowhere in sight, just Lady Metcalf. "Ah, Miss Brank, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, and Miss Linton. Thank you very much for coming. I am delighted that you could make it. I must say I was impressed. Lady Metcalfe's smile was even more fake than mine, and she lied like a professional politician. But then her father had been Foreign Secretary, so maybe it ran in the family. Lady Metcalfe, my aunt trilled. I was so excited when you received our invitation. It was very nice of you, considering you have never before deigned to include us in one of your festivities. Ouch. I could see where this was leading. Poisonous fumes already hung overhead in the air between the two older ladies. I simply could not resist, Lady Metcalfe purred. Sir Philip was so enthusiastic, and I simply had to invite the young lady who has been so fortunate as to attract the affection of one of London's finest young men, despite her regrettable social position. If looks could kill, Lady Metcalfe would have been a red blot on the wall right then, and my aunt would be hauled off to Codbath Fields prison faster than you could say Jack Robinson. Unluckily, though, looks couldn't kill, and my aunt remained a free woman. Remember, she hissed at me while curtsying to Lady Metcalfe, behave yourself. This was going to be a very long night, and he would be there. The young man approached me with vigor in his step. He wore a bright waistcoat and a carnation in his buttonhole, and a bright, confident smile on his handsome face. I disliked him immediately. Miss Linton, he vowed deeply, will you do me the honor of granting me your hand for this dance? I smiled back at him 100 times as brightly. Why, certainly. How could I refuse to dance with you, sir? Now, if I could only remember your name so I could put you on my list of murder victims. Thank you, miss. Stretching out his fingers, he clasped them around mine. Blast. I knew I had agreed to the dance with him, but did that mean he actually had to touch me? Working hard to keep my fake smile on my face, I let myself be led onto the dance floor. From the edge of the crowd, I could see Anne and Maria ogling me with incredulity. I smiled at them too. Tonight was smiling night. Arg. As the first notes of the quadrille began, the young man put his arms around me and began to shove me across the dance floor. I believe officially it is called steering, but that word implies that the steerer actually knows what he's doing, whereas my dance partner evidently did not. Enjoying the dance? He asked me with a cheerful smile. Why, yes, of course, I replied with an even more cheerfuler smile. Curse you, may the furies of hell hound you to pandemonium and back. Me too, what a wonderful ball. Oh yes, so wonderful. And gouging out your eyes would be great. Yes, they should definitely gouge out your eyes, pickle them, and eat them for breakfast. I would have dearly loved to grab the bugger by the collar and see how he liked being steered himself, but my aunt was watching, so I smiled until my face hurt and only contrived to step on my partner's feet now and again. Finally, I had discovered an advantage of hoop skirts. Nobody could see what my heels were doing, not even my aunt. I danced with partner after partner. Most of them were actually quite good dancers, and those who were went away with their feet still intact and an annoyingly good opinion of yours truly. In passing, I heard somebody say, "And that Lily Linton, such a nice, quiet, charming girl, always smiling so brightly. It really lights up the evening, and so very..." Mercifully, I was swept away by my partner then, so I didn't have to hear any more of my false accomplishments. Nevertheless, I knew that my aunt had been right. if I just said, "Yes, sir, of course, sir," to every question asked and smiled prettily, gentlemen who before would have been running in the opposite direction at the sight of me were suddenly delighted with this blasted, charming new lily. It made me want to find an umbrella stand in which to vomit. All this play acting took considerable concentration. Not enough, though, to make me forget about the special guest to whom Wilkins had promised to introduce us tonight. Continuously, my eyes scanned the ballroom for any sign of Mr. Rickard Ambrose. They never found any. My anxiety grew with every minute. What's the matter? Why isn't he here? Or maybe he is here. Maybe he's watching me, gazing coldly at my dress, my fan, and any other articles that screamed female, getting more determined to get rid of this girl in his office with every passing minute. From the moment the idea first entered my mind, I felt an itch on the back of my head, as though he was standing behind me, his cold gaze drilling into the back of my head, which of course was a load of cobblers, because I was dancing the quadrille, ergo twirling continuously around the room, seeing everything. Blast! He can't be here, and he certainly can't be watching me from behind if I'm always pirouetting. Still, I fretted through 3 dances over Mr. Rickard and Bloody Ambrose. Only when I caught sight of Wilkins and Ella dancing a few paces away did I remember that I had other worries tonight as well. Remorse shot through me. For the moment, I had completely forgotten about protecting my little sister from Wilkins' overdone attentions. Well, if I wasn't going to saw a hole in the ballroom floor through which Wilkins could be disposed of, I couldn't do anything while they were dancing. Afterwards, I had swore to myself I would become the most steadfast buffer in the history of womankind. But my kind sisterly plans were cruelly dashed by the time the dance had finished and I had managed to disentangle myself from my partner and rush to my sister's side. The evil flower presenter was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Sir Philip?" I asked. "I don't know." Closing her eyes, Ella sighed and leaned against my shoulder. I let her. I had originally come to serve as a sisterly buffer, but I might just as well be of use as a support column. "Somebody told him something and he excused himself. Honestly, I don't care. I only care that he's gone for a moment. Oh, Lil." Her eyes fluttered open again, and I saw moisture glinting in there as she looked up at me imploringly. What should I do? What in God's name should I do? I was about to answer her, and a very clever answer it would have been, when Sir Philip appeared out of the multitude around us, an eager smile on his face. I noticed that the sunflower he had brought along for Ella was sticking out of his buttonhole, rather clashing with his green and red waistcoat. "My dear Miss Ella. Oh, Miss Lillian, you're here too. Wonderful. Where's the rest of your family? Ah, there." He waved them over eagerly, and they came interested to see what he was so excited about. I was starting to have an idea and felt a dark pit of dread opening up in my stomach. "What's the matter, Sir Philip?" Maria asked, breathless, maybe a bit more breathless than absolutely necessary. "Is something wrong?" "Oh, the contrary, my dear, something is right." He beamed at all of us. "Remember that I told you of this special guest who would be here tonight?" They all nodded. The black pit in my stomach grew by leaps and bounds. My knees wobbled. "Yes, of course we remember." Anne's eyes had become very large. "You don't mean—" "He's here," Sir Philip triumphantly finished. "I have just bumped into him. I've known him for some years, and I'm sure he'll sacrifice a few minutes of his valuable time for my sake. Ladies, it will be my pleasure to introduce you to one of the most wealthy and eminent personages of the British Empire." I cleared my throat. Do you really think we should waste the valuable time of such a man? Cautiously, I started edging backwards. Maria threw me a venomous look. Apparently, she was already determined to conquer the heart of this man, mighty, mysterious man. Oh, my dear sister, if only you knew. I'm sure he'll be delighted to meet all of you. Come, come. Without further ado, Wilkins took me and Ella by the hand and started leading us towards the windowed front of the ballroom. In his boundless enthusiasm, he didn't even notice that I was digging my heels into the ground, and he more or less had to drag me across the ballroom. Bloody heck, let me go. I don't want to see him. I can't. Not in a dress. He'll blast. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's going to do something. But for a weedy man with a flower fixation, Sir Philip was surprisingly strong. In spite of my resistance, I was towed forward. Others were not so reluctant. Lisbeth, Anne, and Maria were giggling and whispering with each other. Hard on her heels, even Ella and Gertrude displayed a modicum of excitement, and as for my aunt, she was practically bursting. Golden coins were shining in her eyes instead of pupils. Please, Sir Philip, I tried to wrest my hand from his grip. I would feel embarrassed meeting such a great man. Nonsense. Wherever would you? Why ever would you? Because, unlike you, I know what he keeps chained up in his cellar. Because I'm a very modest person, that's why, and very shy. Turning his head towards me, Ella gave me a look of pure incredulity. She almost forgot to look where she was going and stumbled over the hem of her own dress. I supposed I couldn't blame her. She was my sister after all, and knew me well. Oh, if that's the only reason, you do not need to worry, Sir Philip assured me. My friend's manners are perfectly unassuming and charming. What? I was so surprised by that description that I actually stopped struggling for a moment, and my nightly tugboat was able to drag me the rest of the way. We arrived at a tightly packed group of individuals. Mostly they were men, the most expensively dressed men I'd ever seen, in midnight black tailcoats and brilliant waistcoats with golden embroidery. They were centered around somebody we couldn't see, all talking excitedly. For one last time, I tugged at my hand, desperately trying to get away, but that blasted Wilkins held my hand firmly. There was no escape. Wilkins tapped the shoulder of one of the men who were bearing the way. Would you be so kind as to step aside for a moment, please? No, don't be kind. Be mean. Be rude, please. Be bloody impertinent and stay where you are. I would like to introduce these ladies to my honored friend. No, bloody heck, no. In spite of my internal pleading, the men in the front of us parted. Out from between them stepped another man. I blinked in surprise. He was lean. He was tall, just like Mr. Ambrose. But there was no way this man could be mistaken for my employer. He had longish blonde hair that was combed back in elegant waves, a slightly curvy hawk-like nose, and light steel blue eyes. Even if all of this could have been faked, and underneath that inviting exterior somewhere lurked the brooding self I had suspected to find here, there was one characteristic which definitely identified this man as somebody other than Mr. Ambrose. He had a broad, inviting smile on his face. Sorry. My roommates are cracking me up. Alright, Alright, we'll get back into it. Good evening, Wilkins. What a pleasure to see you again. The blond man bowed to Ella's admirer, who bowed back. And who, if I may ask, are these lovely ladies you have brought with you? His voice, too, was nothing like Mr. Ambrose. It sounded smooth and eloquent, like a public speaker who could move whole crowds, or maybe a young, dashing general who, by his voice alone, could persuade men to follow him into battle. For some reason, I felt a blush creep up on my cheeks. Of course, where are my manners? Wilkins let go of my hand so he could point us out in turn. Lord Dalgleish, may I present Mrs. Brink, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, Miss Linton, and Miss Linton. Ladies, this is Lord Daniel Eugene Dalgleish. He bowed to each of us in turn, slowly and elegantly. I am charmed. Who knew that such bewitching company would await me at this ball? It hadn't escaped my notice that Wilkins had introduced us to him and not the other way around. Normally, men were introduced to women. For it to be done in reverse, the man must be presumed to be 10 times more important than any woman. With an ordinary man, this would have sent me into a fit of rage. Yet Lord Dalgleish bowed to me, and for a moment I met his steel blue gaze. I knew without a doubt that this was no ordinary man. There was an aura about him, a presence that bespoke greatness. I felt as though those steel blue eyes could analyze every bone in my body and gaze into the darkest recesses of my soul, which was complete bilge, of course. My soul didn't have any dark recesses, did it? I was ripped from the contemplation of my soul by my loving sister Maria, who shoved me out of the way to be closer to her target. It is I who am charmed to meet you, my lord. Tell me, how is it that, though I've been a frequent visitor of many balls in the city, I have never yet had the pleasure of making your acquaintance? Such a great lord as yourself should surely be the life and soul of every ball. Bravo, Maria, bravo. I really had to admire her. She had flattered him, depicted herself as a worthy object of his undying love, fished for information, and flattered him again, and that all in one sentence. She really knew how to catch her fish, only I had a suspicion that this one would prove to be a little bit too big for her nets. Lord Dalgleish gave a light, pleasant laugh. The matter is susceptible of a ready explanation, Miss Linton. I assure you that I am no recluse or social outcast. In fact, I have been away from the metropolis, even from Britain, for a long time now, looking after various matters in the colonies. He shrugged apologetically and smiled a smile of so charming it could maybe even have charmed a fairy queen. It was very unfortunate, considering what I was missing here. My sister wasn't a fairy queen. She didn't have a hope. Oh, Lord Dalgleish, was all she managed to whisper. What brought you back? Sir Philip wanted to know. I would have thought you had enough out there to keep you busy for a lifetime. Seeing our questioning looks, he added with a smile, Lord Dalgleish is the main shareholder in the East India Company. Maria's eyes lit up. If she hadn't been determined to grab this man for herself before, she was now, and seemed to experience similar feelings. I must say I was pretty floored myself. The East India Company. Did such a conglomerate even deserve to be referred to as only a company when it owned and ruled most of India's subcontinent along with its own army and state apparatus? If this man truly was in charge of the East India Company, he was as close to as a king you could get without actually wearing a crown. What brought you back? Sir Philip repeated the question. For a moment, just a moment, the smile on Lord Dalglish's face flickered. It looked almost like what had happened to me not too long ago, but that was hardly likely. Was it? What reason could Lord Dalgleish have for only pretending to smile? Oh, no great matter, he said smoothly. Just a little unfinished business with an old friend. There's a game of chess we need to finish. I frowned. You came to England, traveled thousands of miles just to finish a game of chess. Turning his head towards me, he cranked his smile up a notch, but his steel blue eyes didn't lose their cool, assessing look. Blimey, he was faking a darn sight more convincingly than I, but he was faking. In a manner of speaking, he said, nodding, though we may use no actual board or figures made from wood. My frown deepened. You lost me, your lordship. No, do not worry, I can always find you again. He turned his head and started a light, flirtatious conversation with Anne, who leapt at the chance of overtaking her sister. I just stood there shaking my head. This man was disturbing. As soon as I could manage without seeming offensive, I excused myself. I wanted to get away from him. He was a darn sight too fascinating for me to want to be anywhere near him. I wanted to be alone. Maybe find a quiet refreshment table and a chocolate bar. Gripping Ella by the hand, I started to tug her away with me. Come, I whispered. It's time we made ourselves scarce. She threw me a grateful look and let herself be dragged away. On her own, she would never have had the nerve to run from that bloody Wilkins, but being forcibly carried off by her sister, that she could manage all right. Can you see where the refreshment tables are? Standing on my toes, I tried to determine a safe route through the jungle of people in the evening wear bearing our way. But it was no good. As soon as we detached ourselves from one group, we were swallowed up by another and welcomed with friendly voices. Blast, it had been so much easier when I had been impolite to everybody and scowled instead of smiles. Back then, nobody had given me a second glance. Oh well, the good old days. Miss Linton, and another Miss Linton, a gentleman with a huge waxed mustache, greeted us. I couldn't for the life of me remember his name. Hello, and welcome. Join our little group. Oh no, said another gentleman. I'm sure ladies wouldn't like to listen to our topic of conversation. Nonsense, a gentleman A overrode him. These are no modern, unladylike females. I danced with this young lady, he inclined his head toward me, myself, and she was a model of charm and modesty. How nice of you, and you were the model of arrogance and idiocy. Why, thank you, sir, I said, curtsying. If I may ask, what is it that you were talking of before we came? Gentleman A leaned closer, and so did his companion. Now, I normally wouldn't be mentioning this in the hearing of any ladies, but I can see you two are sensible, demure, and well-bred young girls, so it's all right. I must admit, he had piqued my interest. I was always interested to know what a person like me wasn't supposed to know. Go on, I encouraged. Do you know what is going to happen next Wednesday? Gentleman A whispered. No, what, sir? There's going to be a meeting about this confounded nonsense called woman's suffrage. Indeed, sir? Aye. A few influential gentlemen with press contacts are going to meet with sympathetic scholars and scientists at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park and try to put a stop to this codswallop once and for all. Indeed. Oh, yes. Gentleman B nodded gravely. Imagine, ladies, that there are actually mad creatures that call themselves women and want to make decisions in politics. Ella stared at me, her eyes wide. Then she blinked and quickly turned back to the men. As for my part, she ventured demurely, I found politics incredibly complicated. I am very glad that I do not have to deal with them. Gentleman B nodded energetically and smiled at Ella. Exactly. That is exactly what I was talking about. I can see you are sensible young girls who know their God-given place in the world, just as my friend said so. No word about this to anyone, He gave us what was supposed to be a fatherly smile. It will remain our little secret. I smiled at him brightly. You mean, it would be bad if somebody found out about it? Oh, yes. Gentleman B gave a vigorous nod. If those infernal suffragists found out, they could use the meeting to spread their insane message. Ah, I see. Well, every sensible person can see that such a thing must never happen. Exactly. Gentleman A entered the conversation again. Women's brains aren't big enough for politics. Plus, added Gentleman B, they do not have the potential for violence that men have, and that is the basis for all stable political systems, a fact that I have pointed out to Parliament on numerous occasions. My eyes flickered to Gentleman B. So, it was you who came up with that idea, was it? Yes, indeed, he nodded proudly. Why, have you heard of my theories on female vulnerability? You could say that. My eyes narrowed, infinitesimally. He didn't notice. I wonder, sir, if you would mind stepping into this side room with me for 5 minutes. I have something important to demonstrate to you in regards to your theories. By all means, after you, miss. 5 minutes later, I re-entered the ballroom, my hair a bit ruffled, but otherwise perfectly fine. Ella was waiting for me. Where is that gentleman who went with you? She asked. He experienced a sudden desire to leave through the back door. I gestured to the side room from which I had just emerged, a smile turning up in the corner of my mouth. I believe something in there might have scared him a little. My smile widened. All that was missing now was a feast from the victorious warrior. Not far away I spotted refreshment tables, with something brown on it that might be chocolate. Yum. Come, I said, grasping Ella. Miss Linton? Miss Lily Linton? I turned and stiffened. In front of me was standing none other than Lord Daniel Eugene Dalgleish, smiling at me as if I were another continent to be added to his empire. It is Miss Lily, isn't it? The charm factor of his smile went up another level or two. I'm afraid I might have confused all these lovely Lintons. Yes, I muttered. My name is Lily. Very well, Miss Lily. Would you do me the honor of granting me the next dance? You could have struck me down with a feather. A piece of fluff would probably have sufficed as a cudgel too. I stood there, mute, staring up at him. Lil? Lil? Somebody was tugging on my arm and whispering in my ear. Lil, answer him. For goodness sake, please answer him. Oh, who? Oh, yes, Ella. That was my sister's name, wasn't it? Lord Dalgleish, dancing. Hex whiskers. Had he just really asked me to dance with him? The owner of an entire continent wanted to dance with me? Something was wonky in this world. From somewhere I heard a voice that sounded suspiciously like my own say, Certainly, Lord Dalgleish, I would love to dance with you. A hand grasped mine. It was firm but smooth, the skin of an aristocrat who had never done manual labor. As if in a dream, or maybe a nightmare, Lord Dalgleish led me onto the dance floor with small, elegant steps. I heard it around us, voices hushing, then whispering, the clatter of my aunt's jaw as it hit the floor. But I didn't see any of it. I only saw my own feet and thought, in half a minute, those will have to start dancing. Then the music started. Lord Dalgleish gripped my hand, and suddenly we were whirling around each other with unearthly grace. He was tugging on my hand, throwing me this way and that, too fast for me to do anything about it. Ha! I had thought the other men on the dance floor tried to lead when dancing. I had known nothing. This was real leading, not pushing me forward, but pulling me into following him with masterful moves. I was powerless to resist. Part of me didn't even want to. We went through the forms of the dance, stepping away from each other, marching down the line of dancers. He passed out of my sight, but in passing I saw the look in his eyes as he gazed at me. And that look was something I hadn't seen in the face of this paragon of power. Curiosity. At the end of the line, I turned facing him again. Normally, I went down the line slowly. I was a careful dancer, but he rushed towards me, so I had to follow. Grasping me by my arm, he whirled me around once again. I met his curious gaze. Why did you ask me to dance with you, Lord Dalgleish? The question, uttered low but distinctly, was out of my mouth before I knew I had opened it. Some central, unchangeable, nosy part of me must have shoved it past my teeth in spite of the mesmerizing effects of his presence. It was good to know I was still myself somewhere in there. We danced another turn. "Why on earth should I have a special reason?" he inquired as we passed again. "Is not the pleasure of your company enough?" "No, not really no." And he actually gave a little laugh. It rang like bells, pleasant to the ear. "You do not think much of yourself." "It's not that, it's just that I think you think a lot more of yourself than you do of me." "Oh, please." I looked down demurely. Tonight was play-acting night, after all. "I am only a simple gentry girl, not such an exalted personage such as yourself, my lord." He flashed his brilliant smile again and began pelting me with 100 little compliments, all perfectly arranged to melt the heart of any maiden. The compliments themselves did not get to me. The skill which they were delivered, on the other hand, did. What does this bloody fellow want with me? He could have a dozen women mooning at his feet. Of course, there was always the possibility that he'd fallen madly in love with me at first sight, but that was the kind of thing Ella might have believed, not I, and even if he had, he'd better fall out of love again right speedily. Slowly, the flow of niceties ebbed. We continued to dance, and I had to admit he was an excellent dancer. Lord Dalgleish led in a way that made me not even feel like I was being led. It was effortless, graceful, and enthralling, and that was exactly why I hated it. He didn't make me feel like being led, but, in fact, I was very skillfully, and I didn't take kindly to people trying to fool me. "Oh, really?" a tiny voice inside me asked. "Not even when it's done as magnificently as this?" Finally, after 3 more turns and several more compliments, he got to the point. As we passed each other, he whispered, "I must make a confession, Miss Linton." "Oh?" He turned on the spot in a perfect pirouette. Grabbing my hand, he pulled me towards him, past him, and launched me into the movement alongside the other ladies. When I returned, he said in a low voice, "Yes, I did have a motive to dance with you other than your charm. Although I assure you," he added, smiling again, "that no other motive would have been needed." I faked a smile back at him. Now we were talking business. "But there was one." Taking hold of my arm, he led me into another smooth turn. "Yes, I was curious. When we first met, you looked at me rather strangely, as if you expected to see somebody else. I am used to how people react around me, and your reaction was startlingly different. So, as I said, I am curious. What was going through your mind when you saw me?" How about, "Thank God it's not him"? I hesitated, but I had already fulfilled my quota of lies for the day, and anyway, why shouldn't he know? Fixing my gaze on his mesmerizing steel blue eyes as the ballroom turned around us in a blur, I said, "Sir Philip hinted to us that we were going to meet a person of great importance at the ball. From what he said, I was expecting somebody else." "Oh?" One of his brows rose in interest. "Whom, if I may ask?" I opened my mouth to speak. At that precise moment, 3 heavy, loud knocks came from the large door leading into the ballroom. The music stopped. The dancers stopped. Everything stopped. I nearly stumbled over Lord Dalglish's feet, and only grabbing onto his shoulder kept me from falling. Quickly, I steadied myself again, letting go of his shoulder. I looked around. I could see the same question on every face. Who on earth would be daring, impatient, bad-mannered, and arrogant enough to interrupt a ball in the middle of a dance? Oh, no. The door swung open, and as I knew he would, in strode Mr. Rickard Ambrose, his face harder and more stunning than ever. Everybody stared at him, and he stood there facing the motionless dancers. Everybody except me, that is. I was too busy staring at the tall, ravishingly beautiful woman who had entered the room on his arm. Alright, so this reading this one was a little rocky. There's a lot going on in the background, which made me laugh, and some sound issues with my computer constantly trying to notify me of something unimportant. So, anyway, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and, you know, interesting, you know, new character. What's going on? Who knows? But anyway, yeah, this is chapter 24, Twice Surprised by Robert Thier. You can find this book in a lot of different platforms. I'm sure I don't even know all of them, but you know, it's free on Wattpad. It's a little bit edited on Radish Fiction, so it's a different kind of free there. You think you have to watch you have to wait a little bit to read each chapter there. And you can buy it on Amazon, so go over and support him if you'd like to, and he self-publishes the books, so you can get those. He's still writing these books. There's 9 of them. There's a lot. I haven't even read all of them because there are so many, and as soon as he finishes one, he usually starts another one. So if I want to read anything else, I have to take a bit of a break, but they're still really good books, and I really enjoy them, so I hope you guys enjoy listening to this, and yeah, I will hear you guys next week, I guess. Yeah. All right. Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to say all the things. If you like it, subscribe. If for nothing else, then to know when I post a new one. I'm not planning on this channel blowing up or anything like that, so yeah. You know, consider it. But it's fine if you don't. All right. Other than that, if you have any comments or questions, let me know. But yeah, I'll hear you guys next week. All right. Bye.